I'm talking about politically. We will bring him down. He will be impeached again. What's happening in Texas is invidious discrimination. It is racial. My dear friends, it is racist. It is.
You serious?
So the completely disingenuous Democrat meltdown over the current Texas redistricting effort is continuing here, except the problem that the party has run into thus far, as we covered, is that when it comes to truly doing something to counter or stop what's happening, Democrats have very few options, right? Gavin Newsom, for instance, can make a bunch of empty threats, but when he has to rely on a special election to remove his independent congressional commission, the chances there of really stepping up to the plate for their party look very slim. That is, of course, until the Geico caveman made an arrival on the scene. Because, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time of the day where Representative Al Green is now once again presenting a solution to stop what Donald Trump is doing. And that is by once again filing articles of impeachment for what I believe now is the 6th time he has tried to do this. I mean, it didn't work the first handful of times, but trust me, this time around, Trump will be impeached despite the fact you guys do not even have a majority in the Congress. And these are, of course, the same exact clowns who are accusing us, the Republicans, of playing political games with this entire situation. It's just truly hilarious. But I think this entire backdrop exists behind the fact that, again, the Democrats are desperate here because you see them all over the place starting to realize their odds of stopping this are not looking great. They're truly not really having here that many options, but we'll tell you all about this chronicle here today and give you some updates on this absolute fool and the situation. They're going to impeach Trump again. Okay. Well, with that said, guys, do us a favor. Before we get into it, if you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Subscribing here, guys, is not only the best way to support our videos, but it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And with that said, I think it's important to understand how we got to this point where Al Green is going to be pulling his stunts, because as I said in the beginning, Democrats are realizing they do not have that many options, I should say. And that, of course, comes at the same exact time where Massachusetts Democrat Governor Miss Healy here is threatening to do what many Democrat states have done, right? Redistrict her state in response to what's happening in Texas, except there's a big problem with that, as we'll tell you in a second. I wonder what that could be.
Other governors have talked about redistricting in retaliation. Is that something you would consider in Massachusetts?
You know, isn't it a sad state of affairs that that's where we're at, okay? And, you know, Donald Trump, Greg Abbott, Ken Paxton have left us no choice. That's the reality. Nobody came looking for this, right? We had a system of free and fair elections. We have maps that are regularly drawn, voted on by legislatures, approved and signed off on by governors. This is the way the system works until this comes in. And so, you know, they've left us no choice. It's not where anyone wants to be. I can tell you that governors I know, maybe with the exception of this person in Texas, evidently, we want our constituents represented. We want the voices heard. Whether you vote for me or not, I want your voice to count. I want your vote to count. Unlike Greg Abbott, who doesn't want your voice to count and doesn't want your vote to count, nor does Donald Trump, nor does Ken Paxton, because they're proposing to completely rewrite a map out of nowhere to take away the votes and the voices of Texans. And the message is, not only does this have an impact on Congress, which impacts all of America, it also is something that you don't want to see spread. You don't want to see spread. But Abbott, Paxton, Trump, they leave states with no choice. I want to make sure that people have access to health care. I don't want to see further cuts to Medicaid or to housing or to veterans or to poor little kids who need to eat. Okay? So that is why it becomes an issue for a governor in New York and a governor in Illinois and a governor in Massachusetts, governors all around the country.
So, Governor, does that mean you're actually redistricting?
I'm sorry?
You're planning to perhaps move forward on a redistricting plan in Massachusetts?
We just did that. We're going to follow the rules. I don't know if the Secretary of State wishes to comment, but we just went through a customary and orderly process just a few years ago.
Okay, well, first of all, she states that, our process was fair because we had a map drawn by the state legislature and approved by the governor. So that means, of course, Massachusetts does not have one of these so-called independent redistricting commissions, which hence means what they did is no different than what Texas is right now doing. Guess what Texas is trying to do? Have a congressional map that's drawn by the state legislature and approved by the governor. It's not just being arbitrarily drawn by Donald Trump and forced in the law or something. So again, I don't know what she's talking about. There you have, as usual, Democrats crying about democracy when they're basically talking about nothing. But that's number one. Secondly, though, it's worth noting that the biggest problem a state like Massachusetts would be running into as they make these threats about how, Trump has left us no choice, is that, guys, currently, there are 0 Republican districts in the entire state of Massachusetts already. So I say to Massachusetts, I fully welcome you to redistrict and, draw your maps once again. I mean, shoot, go ahead. What possibly could be the harm, right? If anything, you might just give Republicans a better chance. So that's absolutely laughable. But it once again highlights this theme that I'm saying when it comes to this gerrymandering redistricting issue. Again, Democrats have very little options. The reason for that is, first of all, the majority of a lot of their deep power center states, right, the major blue states, are already heavily gerrymandered. We talk about Illinois and Maryland, some of the worst gerrymandered states in America all the time. New York and California are not exactly fair. And as you can see, you have a state like Massachusetts that already has 0 Republicans. And so the problem, the desperation here, and it is desperation, just that desperation truly that you're witnessing, comes from the fact that they know they've already basically gerrymandered to the max in the 2020 census. And so when it comes to trying to retaliate, there are not a lot of options for them left on the table. And that's exactly why they're freaking out as badly as they can. When you look at the nationwide situation, it basically stands where Democrats largely already hit their ceiling when it comes to partisan redistricting, but Republicans, who played way too quote-unquote fair in the last census, have a lot more they could do. That's why Texas is doing it. Ohio's looking to join in. You've heard talk out of places like Florida, Indiana, Missouri, all these states, because there's a lot of room to move there. Secondly, though, furthering this theme of the desperation, you of course currently hear the empty threats from Gavin Newsom on how we're going to strike back. Except the problem is that in order for this to happen, the California legislature would need to declare a special election because, of course, it's already been added as an amendment to the California state constitution that they have this so-called independent redistricting commission that's not even all that independent. But in order to do this, they would need to declare a special election by August 22nd, right? That would be the deadline to hold an election probably sometime this year, early next year, in time for the 2026 midterms. And they're currently on recess until August 18th. I'm going to take a wild guess here that I'm not exactly sure the Democrat lawmakers are going to want to come to work anyway. And so that's going to leave them only 5 days to finalize the maps and push forward a ballot initiative here. It's not looking all that great. With that said, it's worth noting you even have the so-called moderate Democrats joining in with this lunacy, right? You have, for instance, Representative Alyssa Slotkin, or Senator, I should say now, Alyssa Slotkin, out of Michigan, who ran on being this type of centrist that's going to represent the Rust Belt. And yet here you have her saying that she'd like California and Illinois to go nuclear with redistricting while claiming she would like it to be nonpartisan, but we can't do that. Again, a so-called moderate here. But once again, I want to say here that there's already one major problem with that. But first, take a listen.
I'm going to urge and encourage blue states like a California or a Chicago or a Illinois, to do the same thing. I don't want to do that. I want the country to have a completely nonpartisan drawing of the lines based on the census. But if they're going to do that and go nuclear, so am I.
Right, so let's break down that statement because I don't want Democrat talking points on this subject to be ignored or just allow them to get away with it. So first of all, what is the premise of her stating that California and Illinois need to retaliate? It's of course implying there that these are already states that are drawn fair, right? According to her, not just California, but Illinois especially. We've shown that map a million times. You guys can Google it if you want to see it again. One of, if not the most egregiously gerrymandered state in this country, she is arguing that's drawn fairly, and Illinois should gerrymander even more, and that would apparently make the situation fair here. So completely disingenuous, completely lying, completely insane. But it also, I want to point this out, really drives home at the heart of this Democrat lie that they really do want a federal ban on gerrymandering, right? National legislation to ensure the nonpartisan drawing of congressional districts. We truly want to be fair about this, because what that means, guys, to be clear, let's be clear about this. They say, Republicans don't want to ban gerrymandering. We do. Well, first of all, gerrymandering is already technically illegal. The problem is it's hard to enforce. The problem is when you have a partisan drawing of districts, you can get away with some degree of it, right? That's why some maps get struck down in court and why some don't. It's pretty simple there. But of course, right, if that is the case, then she's also noting here the state of California, and truly what Democrats are pushing for is they want to create these so-called independent redistricting commissions like the one in California. That's what they're saying, right? So essentially with this so-called legislation they keep pushing for nonpartisan redistricting, what that means is a probably federal commission to draw these congressional maps that will be appointed and selected and handcrafted single-handedly by Democrats. And guys, I'm sure that's going to result in such fair representation. Yeah, absolutely not. Worth noting, by the way, they talk about getting rid of gerrymandering, but they are absolutely in no way planning to get rid of the forced mandated race-based gerrymandering that is currently mandated by the Voting Rights Act. It's the exact problem in Texas, Alabama, and many other red states that gives Democrats the inherent advantage. We say no deal. Again, you guys have already gone nuclear. You've already gerrymandered your states. You're saying you're going to gerrymander them again. It's an empty threat and it's completely ridiculous. So with all of that said, again, you have a lot of arguments here, a lot of tactics falling apart. Yeah, you're going to gerrymander Illinois even more. I'm sure that's really going to happen and not a stupid threat. I'm sure that'll hold up in court, by the way, to somehow make that map worse. You, of course, are now at the point where out of total desperation, the Geico caveman is indeed now labeling what's happening in Texas as invidious discrimination and racist. Of course, completely ignoring the fact that what they're currently trying to do is get rid of a congressional map that we've talked about time and time again that's actually racially discriminatory. But the argument here by Democrats is actually that black and brown voters should have a disproportionate, not an equal, but a disproportionate electoral voice in our country. Nonetheless, here you have him saying that, and then we'll get to the point where he indeed is doing it. Here he goes again, right? In introducing articles of impeachment against Trump for the millionth time now.
What's happening in Texas is invidious discrimination. It is racial. My dear friends, it is racist. Yes. It is. And we have to say it. Yes. We have to say it. Yes. That's what it is. I know it when I see it. I know it when I smell it. I know it when I hear it. And we have a duty, a responsibility, and an obligation to stand up to it. All of us. I'm telling you, it's not just Texas. If it were just Texas, Emmanuel Cleaver wouldn't have his seat on the chopping block in Missouri. It's more than Texas. It's this country. And we, the Democrats, are going to make the difference, because when democracy was on the line, let it be said that Democrats took the stand to preserve and save democracy in the United States of America. God bless you. This president is going to, he's going to be brought down. He's going to be brought down. He has to be brought down. And I don't mean physically. I'm talking about politically. We will bring him down. He will be impeached again.
You know, I'm just quaking in my boots. I'm sure it's going to work this time, right? So anyways, there you have it. By the way, here is the very congressional map. We've shown this before. I encourage you to go watch all of our past videos on it. But just to briefly recap for the new people, this right here is the Texas 33rd Congressional District that Republicans are not currently looking to draw, because look at it, it's obviously a gerrymander, that they're looking to get rid of. And what is this district? Why does it exist to begin with? Well, it's not because Republicans intentionally tried to draw a district, this is a Democrat district, by the way, that would gerrymander against their favor, right? It gerrymanders Democrats and screws over the Republicans. This is a so-called majority-minority district that is mandated by a very outdated and I think, frankly, wrong section of the Voting Rights Act that basically states that if you have a certain number of black or brown people in your state, you have to draw like majority minority districts to basically fit them and accommodate them, which in itself is inherently discriminatory, right? It forces red states, primarily in the South, by the way, who have the highest per capita black populations of mostly any state out there, to draw lines, literally draw congressional districts based on race, which is inherently discriminatory. The Supreme Court is currently reviewing it, might be looking to strike down this mandate, I should say, that is forcing states to do this, as we've covered here before. But again, what they're claiming here is racist is actually that the Texas state legislature is trying to fix this abomination and go for something more fair and less gerrymandered. And by the way, talking about the Voting Rights Act, talking about the review of this whole situation, same thing happens in the state of Alabama, for instance, where Democrats get an extra seat because of the legally mandated racial discrimination made within the drawing of congressional districts that only favors Democrats, by the way. It's worth noting in a state like New Mexico, where white people are the minority, you don't get any federal court demanding that there be a white minority district drawn. No, this is only something that exclusively is helping Democrats win seats, and they're essentially mad that we're looking here to do away with it. And why would that be the case? Why would that be the case, guys? It would be true because without actually gerrymandering, including the race-based gerrymandering currently being mandated by a wrongful interpretation of a wrongful federal law, is being forced upon our country and hence giving Democrats their built-in advantage, on top of the fact that states like Illinois, Maryland, and others extensively gerrymander in favor of Democrats already. And I think you're starting to see the mask truly come off, because just today, Representative Jasmine Crockett, a very high IQ individual, basically here comes on and makes the argument, not just that Democrats will win the House in 2026, but actually, as she says here, we should have the House right now. Let me say it again. We should have the House. And what is she saying by that? She's basically saying that in 2022 or 2024, if there was not gerrymandering in place, as they keep saying, if Republicans were not, quote unquote, rigging the elections, then Democrats would have control of the House. Of course, there is a major problem with that, which is the fact that in both 2022 and 2024, guess what? Republicans won the national popular vote, and guess what? They have control of the national legislative chamber. So to me, it actually seems fairly democratic. Now, when you actually break down how narrow the House Republican majority is, that's where you start to see the effect of wide-scale nationwide gerrymandering. Nonetheless, this is a pretty interesting argument because it's showing you exactly what they believe. These people do not support independent redistricting. They support being able to essentially rig the elections and gerrymander in their own favor, but banning Republicans from doing the same. Because here you have a top Democrat, leader of the Democrat Party, as some have said, that is arguing Democrats should still control Congress even though they lost the majority of the vote in the past two elections. Listen to her stupidity for yourself, and well, it's hysterical.
This is not a Texas problem. If Texas creates 5 more House of Representative seats, that's an America thing, right? That could be the distinction. That could be the difference between Republicans keeping hold of Congress in the midterm elections or not.
No, it absolutely could be. I mean, think about it this way. Right now, the Democrats should control the House, but we don't. And the only reason we don't control the House isn't because we didn't work hard, isn't because we didn't raise money, isn't because we didn't put up good candidates, but it is because North Carolina, as soon as they ended up with a Republican majority on that Supreme Court, decided to redraw the lines again. And instead of that state being 7-7, which sounds like how that state has historically been voting, instead now the congressional delegation is 10 Republicans and 4 Democrats. They took 3 seats away from us, and those 3 seats would have made the difference in having a Speaker Johnson and a Speaker Jeffries. And, well, one of those is bigger, better, and greater than the other, and I'm sure you know which one that is.
Yeah, well, first of all, not to keep on hammering home at this point about Illinois, but she's crying here about 3 seats, as if, again, their side is not gerrymandering, and their side mostly across America do not have the bigger states, because guess what? We're going to keep on saying it, but in Illinois, where in 2024, the electorate went 54-43 Democrat, right? 11-point Democrat victory. You guys control 14 of the congressional seats. We only control 3. That's much more disproportionate to the 3-seat difference you're moaning here about in North Carolina, number one. But secondly, again, she is making this argument that Democrats should control the House, the party of democracy, the party of having free and fair elections, blah, blah, blah. She's arguing that should be the case while they lost both national popular votes in the last 2 elections, okay? So according to her, even when Democrats lose the popular vote, they should still control legislative bodies. But trust me, it's the Republicans who are gerrymandering or changing the system or rigging the elections and making them unfair. Needless to say, she's not a very high IQ individual. But then again, she's far from alone, of course, within the Democrat Party.
And I won the election in a landslide. And obviously, that's only, we're only 6 months in. But my poll numbers are better now, much better than during the election. And now part of that is because the Democrat Party is self-destructing. I mean, when you have low IQ people like Crockett, I wonder if she's in a relationship to the late, great Davy Crockett, who was a great gentleman. I wonder if she's got any relationship to Davy Crockett, the great old Davy Crockett. But you have this woman Crockett. She's a very low IQ person. Somebody said the other day she's one of the leaders of the party. I said, you got to be kidding. The Democrats are lost. They have Trump derangement syndrome so bad that they can't walk, they can't talk, I mean. They don't know where they're going. Schumer is finished.
But yeah, to summarize here, guys, there you basically have it. You are currently watching the leaders, and yes, indeed, the leaders of the Democrat Party, reach to total desperation tactics, largely because of the fact that, first of all, they're going to lose this political battle on Texas redistricting, simply assuming here that the Texas state government has enough guts to enforce the fact that currently the Democrats fleeing to the state of Illinois are breaking the law. And assuming that's the case, they're very likely to, again, not really have a bunch of tools to retaliate. But even thirdly here, the gaslighting, the dishonesty, can only go so far. Okay, the longer they push this issue, the more information comes up, the more it becomes less about headlines and more details come out. And when people start to realize the true story, of course, of Democrat gerrymandering across this country, it's a fact that they're just objectively wrong about this. They're objectively lying, okay? And the panic is over the fact that, hey, it's coming to light, essentially. So with all of that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.